Welcome to The Oracle Scroll, a podcast for the spiritual seeker. Please join me, Kevin Walder, your host, as we explore living a spiritual life in a very mixed up world. Welcome back to The Oracle Scroll, episode 32, this is. And today we are joined by Susan Sinclair. Susan Sinclair is a spiritual worker who has devoted a great deal of time and effort to our local community. And, well, in her own words, she has said that this is the work she does. She says, "Let all who need me find me. Let me relieve suffering, let me release binding, and let me restore joy." Wow, that's some powerful direction there and some powerful words. And Susan is, honestly, she is somewhat understated at times, but the message that she conveys is one that will actually bring us to a new level. Spiritual people, as we are, we tend to sometimes focus on just the bright and beautiful, and we don't really notice that there are other aspects to our lives. And so Susan is here today to talk about how we might embrace all of ourselves rather than just the bright and beautiful parts. So with that, welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, great. I'm glad to have you. So as we talked in the brief moments before we started recording, I remembered a presentation that you did that really struck home with me and really stuck with me, because it does come back to that subject of us trying to make everything pretty. And sometimes everything isn't pretty. And sometimes we have to get to realize that is part of us as well. So I'm interested in hearing more about how this came about for you and how you put together this presentation. What manifests to you that made you need to talk about that?
That's a great question, because the journey is one that other people may relate to. We are all explorers. We're all discovering, what does it mean to be divine beings in human form? What does it mean to actually live here, to live a fulfilling, rewarding, productive life that changes things for the better because we were here in this human form with, and here's, it's not necessarily baggage, but it's like the apparatus of being human. And for a lot of us benevolent souls who've come into this incarnational way of being, we get tripped up by the complexity and even just the fact that Earth's a binary system that's built on polarities. That for every quality, every energetic quality, there is an opposite.
Yes.
Here's where we get snarled up and tangled up in really major ways of understanding the world and what it means to be divinely incarnated. We have layered on these value judgments of bad or good on many things where they are truly neither one. They just are. They are complementary rather than conflicting. Humans have this huge need for drama and adrenaline and conflict. And so we have actually layered on these points of view on things that are not in opposition or conflict, like night and day.
Right.
They are essential in maintaining the balance of life on this planet. And they don't fight each other. They simply complement each other. And it's all in the way you're looking at it. We've been trained from, and this is part of my journey, as a very devoted Christian, soaking up that viewpoint about everything's a battle. There's good and
Yes.
evil, light and dark. God is definitely male, and he's in the sky, and he's going to send you to hell, but he loves you.
Oh, yes.
So, once my daughter and I worked our way out of that thinking, and it came about with Reiki attunements, kind of just blasted open all of that box, what I call orthoboxy.
Okay.
This orthoboxed thinking, and I got out of the box. Suddenly things began to not seem so necessarily adversarial.
Mm-hmm.
That there was a lot of things that could be embraced as wholeness, as the two parts that create this beautiful whole: light and shadow, the bright and the not so bright. The issue has been when we outsourced our personal spiritual authority. In times gone by, when we were at a lower consciousness, when our options to create what we desired for ourselves were far more limited. We were locked into various social strata, various structures, various ways of creating life and sustenance, and they were pretty rigid.
Oh,
if
yeah.
we had any other desires or emotions, there was really no place for them to go except in destruction, in harm, in causing harm to others or to ourselves, or both. And possibly well-meaning. I can't claim to know their intentions, but these authority figures from either politics, culture, or religion took a look at that situation and said, we have got to preserve the species. We've got to survive and stop killing each other willy-nilly.
Right.
So their solution, given the state of consciousness and given the very limited outlets for desires and for the strong emotions we feel that motivate us to take action, which are often not the pretty, bright things, but I'll get into that, because that's what really needs to shift in our thinking for us to have the power, the genuine, authentic power to be our full selves and make the difference we're here to make.
Wow.
What they did was they said, you can't have those emotions.
Right.
And yet what we know for sure is, in a binary system, you suppress one side, it throws everything out of balance.
Right.
And that's exactly what's happened through all this time. We've had these religious strictures that forbade or vilified these aspects of ourselves that are not inherently evil, but they were labeled evil. And so as we move into new spiritual horizons, if we've come from religious backgrounds, or we're still affected by the religious zeitgeist, so to speak, we have often not yet consciously reframed or reclaimed the fullness of ourselves.
Right.
We're still operating under those old, obsolete principles and value judgments. And that's what I have tended to think of. It's made us, it's rendered us, it's declawed and defanged us and gutted our ability to be who we are here to be, as benevolent forces.
Wow. Now that's some powerful information, because that addresses so many things that we all deal with. It's amazing. And I was just thinking, as you were talking there, that the one emotion that we were always allowed was anger. We could have that, but nothing else.
And we couldn't, it was really severely hemmed in.
Yes.
Wrath is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
And that's what I kind of wanted to reframe for all of us. Those are what I would just call the big 7.
Okay.
And the primal motivators, but understanding their purpose. And again, knowing that is not all, that's not by any means the full range of the human emotional spectrum that some might label air quote negative. But they're like the top 7 that pretty much everyone who in Western culture especially is aware of, and has that niggling sense of shame,
right,
disowning about.
Exactly.
Which has hobbled us. It's
Mhm.
completely hobbled us in doing what we are meant to do, because let's face it, the forces of malevolence have no such restrictions.
Right.
It's like we've been playing golf with this major handicap, and the other side has no handicap at all. So they're outscoring us unbelievably.
Right. Wow.
And if we would just remove our handicaps, we
Hmm.
could be unstoppable.
And all those handicaps are labels.
Exactly.
They're
Labels,
just labels.
judgments.
Yeah. It is almost humbling when you realize that. I mean, just as we're talking here, you realize that it's such a simple concept, but yet it's so controlling and so confining that it makes it so difficult for us to be, who we're called on to be. So
Yes, it's been a very, very effective limiter
oh yes,
on the
definitely.
power of benevolence.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yet, like you and many other thoughtful spiritual people are
Oh yes.
questioning those long held beliefs, those the things that were practically unconscious to
Right.
us are now being made conscious, which means they're up for change.
Right.
Once we become aware, we can
it's
do
one of
something.
the I'm sorry. It's
Sorry.
one piece of advice that I give my clients, and I have to say it to myself over and over again, is question everything. And especially question those things that you are absolutely sure of, because those are probably the ones that are holding you back.
That's beautifully put and right. Boy, once you start operating under that premise,
Mm-hmm.
the box flies open
Right.
and you can finally get out. It takes courage,
Oh boy.
obviously, and relentless honesty
Mm-hmm.
about admitting. And so the process is, first for me, what I urge people to go into is acknowledge.
Right.
Acknowledge what you have not allowed before.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge, allow it to be there, and then appreciate it.
Yep.
That's this path of self-healing and creating wholeness within ourselves, which is ultimately the only way we're going to anchor oneness consciousness on the planet, is when we have really restored oneness, wholeness, the full embrace of every aspect of ourselves as sacred and divine, that there's nothing that's not sacred. There's
Right.
nothing profane. There's nothing shameful about any aspect of being an embodied human.
Right.
It is what we've chosen to overlay it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
With these values, with these judgments, like you say,
Right.
with these beliefs. When we dismantle and disentangle ourselves from those beliefs, it can be, it can be a little alarming at first. We can feel truly naked.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And from there, we choose to clothe ourselves with the beauty that our soul actually has for
Mm-hmm.
us to wear.
And this right now, this is so important and so apropos for our situation in this world right now. I mean, the relationships between ethnic groups, I refuse to call them races, because we have one single race and
Right.
I do not recognize others. But when you consider the oh my goodness, the friction and the enmity that is constantly being evidenced now, I mean, and not just theatrically, but out in the marketplace, it's very important that we drop those labels. And that's why I'm very interested in your view on this, because it's really it's a fresh sight, and that helps a lot to help us mature.
Exactly. It's like, and lately in some of the spiritual work that I've done for people, it's been almost clinical or medical, that the images that come to me are festering sores that are erupting and being cleansed and cleared. And so one way to look at this is like some of that hidden, suppressed, wrongly directed emotion has now erupted, which means it's ready to be healed.
Right.
But it's not pretty to see
No.
these eruptions and to witness them, or to be, to be aware of them, and then to realize some of this is in me.
Yes. Yes.
That I can look out there and be all like, oh, these people are such a mess. And it's like, but wait, wait, we need to start from inside. That's the only place where we truly have autonomy and power, is over our own spiritual being and our own choices.
Right.
How we choose to respond to what comes up within us.
Right. And I think sometimes the whitewashing and the spick and span kind of clean up everything in our spiritual community is more of us just not being able to face the flaws in ourselves and trying to attain a level of perfection that we're human. We're not going to get there. So it's it's embracing the part of being human, being human, all aspects of being human, and that's the key.
And it's about, as you said, embracing. Again, the New Age philosophies are in some ways just a reworking, and I don't mean any disrespect, but they have so much resonance with traditional religious outlooks.
Yes.
There's some new words, there's some progression in understanding, but there's still a whole lot that they haven't yet let go of.
Right.
We're still so comfortable with the old patriarchal religious way of looking at things that we have unconsciously brought them forward and just put some new words on them.
Yes.
So, and I know, again, it's part of the human developmental process that it's incremental, and it's uneven. There's uneven growth. And the goal still, I mean, what they've ended up doing, where we are right now, is, as you've said, with New Age philosophy, there is this, it must be all positive all the time.
Right.
All light and bright and pretty. That's what we value. That's what we allow ourselves to talk about. These are the motivations we allow ourselves to have for creating change in the world. And I've learned, and this is fairly recent, so I thought the timing is truly divine, because I just had this crystallizer gel in my own thinking when I was exposed to the work of another teacher that I would highly recommend. Her name is Andrea Hess. Her modality is soul realignment. Like me, she works in the Akashic Records. She has her own frame of reference, which is an interesting contrast to my own. But her contention, this eye-opening revelation, was that there is no such thing as a negative, air quote, emotion.
Wow.
That all emotions are simply part of the human experience. The entire gamut of emotions are just part and parcel of being human, and that the ego, which has been so vilified in most spiritual, contemporary spiritual thinking, there's been all these different ways to kind of just deal with the ego, and some schools of thought are about transcend it.
Right.
Schools of thought are about accept it. Some schools of thought have yet other approaches to it. But the point is, this ego is a significant aspect of being an embodied human. And yet, because it holds all the polarities, we are finding it difficult to cope.
Right.
Cope with having an ego. So many of us try to not have an ego. It's like not acceptable anymore to have an ego. But what I clearly understand, these truths that Andrea was talking about resonated with me so deeply, I could feel my body just relax. I could feel myself just settle and say, this is true. Right. And I would really just say for anyone, that's the inner litmus test. If you can relax
Mm-hmm.
into something you're hearing, then it's like this resonates. This is healing to your soul. This is a truth that is fully harmonious with you.
Right.
So her truth is that the ego is the interface between soul and body and the implementer of any kind of action. That what's happened to spiritual people is we get these wonderful inspirations from our higher selves, and they hit the ego and the mind. Those two work hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
The mind is a time traveler that remembers the past and makes plans for the future and makes decisions. But the ego is the implementer.
Okay.
The ego is what brings it down to the body level and says, this is good for me, so I will do it.
Uh-huh.
And because we have vilified the ego, we've kind of rendered it powerless. We've tried to hobble it or discard it or whatever. We've tried to do anything but actually work with it and embrace, as you said, all the aspects, all the polarities that the ego encompasses. And that's where we get into understanding these, quote, negative emotions, the role of the ego, and how they work together to create wholeness and a blend of motivations that make us unstoppable as a force for good.
Wow.
So the issue has been historically that the ego has all of these emotions, including the big seven, the pride and anger and greed and lust and envy, all these emotions that aren't pretty, that we don't like to talk about. We don't want to admit we have them, but they are, I don't call them deadly or sinful.
Mm-hmm.
They're primal.
Right.
These are primal motivators that are generated by the ego as a way of saying, I want more.
Okay.
It is a way to express desire and to say, I want this, not that.
Mm-hmm.
And that clarification is crucial. In order to take truly productive action, you've got to get clear. And it's very important to acknowledge that before, when we had no place for those primal emotions to be expressed in ways that made a greater good. Mostly if people were angry, they went and killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Lust, we start a war.
Right.
Or we steal the woman, or we kill the husband.
Right.
All these things had very malicious, malevolent outlets only.
Right.
And so to endeavor to change that, the solution was deny those emotions, make them bad and wrong, and try to condition people out of it. Well, now some major changes have happened in the last few centuries. First, our ability to create new, more expansive lives for ourselves has exponentially increased. We can do things to create life for ourselves that weren't even possible. A woman can be a millionaire now in her own right. A woman could be president. A woman can't, and that's true for men too, that you're not locked into what your father did for a living.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So all these ways we've gotten out of the box, expanded our potential to create what we desire. Mm-hmm. Then we realize that these emotions, these primal emotions, are the missing pieces of motivation that make us unstoppable.
Wow.
And so let me just give you a couple of examples from Andrea's teaching that make perfect sense. She, many of us who choose to be spiritual entrepreneurs, we have this altruistic, benevolent purpose. We have a vision of service. Now, these are motivations that are also from the ego because they create satisfaction for the self.
Yes.
But these are very sanitized. These are safe. These are socially acceptable. We can always say, I want to make the world a better place.
Right.
I want my daughter to know what's possible for a woman to achieve.
Right.
I want to have, I want to be able to travel to sacred places and therefore create the income to do that. Mm-hmm. So all that's like really well accepted. But here's another reason. All those things can be true, but what if alongside that, there is pride that says, I could do better than that other entrepreneur. I could make that work better than she did.
Right.
What if there's also the big middle finger that you're giving to all the people who told you weren't any good, that you couldn't possibly succeed, that you're not worthy, and you're proving by this great thing you're creating that, yeah, F you. You were wrong.
Exactly.
So pride is a tremendous motivator. And it's really, this rebellious streak in certain people's temperaments. It's not a major component for everyone. And that's one of those discernment things where once you own it and see, oh, this gets me moving.
Right.
Then you can own it and claim it and honor it. You don't have to talk about it. We may not all be ready to talk openly about how pride motivated us or envy or lust or greed.
Right.
That's okay. You can keep that under, that's part of your private life, but to acknowledge to yourself that this is what's getting me moving. And this is when we meet the inevitable resistance, because let's face it, polarity, there's benevolence, there's malevolence. For everything, there can be friction. There is resistance from both within ourselves, the unhealed parts of ourselves,
Right.
the fear, and there's resistance from outer forces, glitches, hitches, obstacles, challenges. All those things come up.
Right.
And we won't be unstoppable if our only motivation is, I just want the world to be a better place for my children.
Right.
That is not going to cut the mustard.
Exactly.
When your computer breaks down and the bill collectors are at the door and somebody's threatening you with a lawsuit. I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it.
Right.
But what is going to cut it is the anger that says, I will never be afraid of a lawsuit again because I have made this epic life for myself and I am bulletproof.
Right.
So anger is a huge motivator too, because
yes, it is.
Tell us where we got violated and it gets us moving. Shamans, as you probably know, when a person's very ill and they're mostly depressed and despairing, the shaman will goad them into being angry, because when the person gets angry, their energy is galvanized and can be then directed into healing.
Well, it's an adrenaline rush. Yeah.
Yes. And that's the issue, directing these primal, potent energies into benevolent outlets. That's what was the missing piece in earlier times. We only had malevolent outlets where we are reactive and we go hit somebody or hurt somebody or destroy something. Now we have the outlet where instead of, for example, you're angry at someone for misjudging you or making you feel ashamed or wrong about your choice of livelihood.
Right.
The reactive response, slash their tires. Go insult them, troll them on Facebook, those kinds of things. This direct lashing out is the old paradigm malevolent outlet for that legitimate emotion of feeling angry and violated.
Right.
The productive outlet would be that you then choose to do something in your own life that is irrefutable proof that this person misjudged you.
Right.
You don't ever need to get in a confrontation with them. In fact, that is where things devolve into that kind of drama and gossip and bickering and stupid stuff that people go into when they haven't realized, I need to channel this emotion into creating potent benevolence.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. In fact, it dovetails with, I've always had a problem with the idea of positive energy and negative energy. Energy is energy. Energy is neutral. Energy doesn't, it's the electricity that you're using to read your book with is the same electricity that will burn your house down if you have a short. It's the same energy. It's just how is it being directed? And that's exactly what you're saying here is directing your understanding and appreciation of these energies that's the secret.
It truly is. And it is about integrating.
Yes.
First acknowledging the presence of these primal motivators. And these primal motivators are self-serving, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with benefiting yourself.
Right, right. And that's another aspect too, that kind of guilt about success.
Yes,
That's so
because,
defeating.
and what if the whole point is this is not success at anyone's expense?
Right,
This is not success that comes from harming others, it's from doing a greater good ourselves.
right.
So again, acknowledging where sometimes our thinking's gotten a bit distorted or misguided. And the one thing I would suggest we work on erasing is blame, shame, and guilt
Yes,
about the wholeness of being human, about, having pride. The power of pride is breaking a rule or a stereotype that needs to change.
right, right.
That's pride. And that's been the impetus for tremendous advancements in human culture, technology, thinking. Everything has come from someone saying, that is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do better.
Right.
That's his pride. But that's pride channeled into I do better, not I sit there and pick at what's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I decide to do something right. I do a greater right.
Right. And that's, you mentioned your background, and my background was somewhat similar, a very strict religious background, in which it was actually beaten into us. And I mean that quite literally.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
actually beaten into us that if you excelled at anything, then you were putting on airs and you were being pretentious, and that was in itself wrong, calling attention to yourself, because all the glory, that story. So yeah, so
Wow.
that is a huge thing to cast off. And it's not easy. I mean, you find yourself going back to those old ways of thinking sometimes, and that's where your work comes in. Is we need somebody to slap us around a little bit and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we taught you.
Right. Just
So,
lovingly saying, what if?
right.
What if you simply allow that all of these emotions, all the big seven and everything else, most people would say that this standing out and being more successful than others is a combination of greed and pride.
Yes.
And greed is simply the desire to expand,
Mm-hmm.
the dream of more. There's nothing unwholesome about wanting more.
Right.
It's how, what if you did stop settling and let yourself want more? What would happen if you had bigger dreams and actually went for them? So that the reason that people were afraid of us doing that is that we would stir up envy in others, which could be quite dangerous to the survival of the species.
Right.
So envy is really inspiration.
Right.
What you're meant to be is an inspiration. And if others envy you, their responsibility is to notice the envy and say, hey, instead of stealing their success, what if I create my own version of it? So I
Exactly.
can a life every bit as epic as theirs in my own way.
Exactly. Actually, George Carlin had the best response to that commandment about envy, and his response was that's not wrong. That's how the economy works. And if you think about it, it's true. I mean, we tend to, we as a species, I think we tend to be a bit of a group of followers. And so if we see something that is, like you just said, something that is actually appealing and is kind of like, oh, they're living my dream, that just makes should just make us work harder, instead of trying to figure out how to do something irresponsible.
Right, to deprive them or steal stuff from them. That's the destructive outlet that was what we are clearly saying, that's malevolence.
Right.
Causing harm to others to benefit us, that's malevolence. But like you said, this is all about rechanneling, redirecting the energy to say, okay, they have a life I want. Then let me turn the energy. How do I make that for myself? How do I
Right.
do that myself? Because now we have the capability of doing that. In earlier times when you were locked into your social position, you could envy people all you wanted, but unless you killed them, you couldn't have what they had.
Right. And even then, you may not. So,
You still might not get it. So
yeah,
now we
exactly.
have so many more options, so many more quote positive, but productive,
Mhm.
benevolent outlets for these primal potent motivators. We can harness them and ride this really powerful energy to create powerfully transformative outcomes, to create change
Wow.
that feels great and that does great things in the world. But, we've got the layers and the blend. It's this being willing to blend,
Mhm.
this altruistic motivation, the socially acceptable motivation of saying, I want to make the world a better place by healing people, by having people know who they are as a soul, relieving their suffering. And God, and bleep it, I want to create a life that shows my ex that I can make a better living than he ever did.
Oh, okay.
Now, that might be in there. Or the idea of lust,
Mhm.
lusting for life, lusting after your goals. What harnessing this potent sexual energy, which is a whole nother topic about how we
Mhm.
vilified sexual energy, but to say what is the most powerfully creative energy we can access is our
Yes.
sexual energy. So how do we turn that into potent creativity? That's lust made benevolent.
Wow. That's
And
great.
the gluttony, sensual pleasure.
Mhm.
How can I create a life that makes me enjoy my body and being physical? It's embracing and delighting in our incarnation
Right.
and saying, how can I create marvelous sensual pleasures for myself that make me really glad that I picked a body to live in?
Right. Right.
So the whole point here, again, is that different people, and this would be another interesting topic to explore because my little inkling, I haven't followed this through. I believe the zodiac signs have some of these primal motivators more strongly than others. I'm a Leo
Okay.
with a lot of Virgo.
Mhm.
With Leo, I could really see this combination of pride, anger, and sloth
Right.
being absolutely brilliant, self-centered motivators.
Okay.
And sloth for me, that's one of my personal biggies. I'm a very yin energy person, and yin is receptor energy. It's not the driver, it's the magnetizer.
Uh,
So I was, and this is another clue for people. What did people criticize you for? Or what did you think was your own besetting sin?
mhm.
Whatever you found to be your besetting sin, that's probably that primal motivator that simply needs to be redirected. Sloth is a big one for me, and what it turns the positive, the beneficial, the benevolent direction of sloth is letting go of what everyone says I should do.
Right.
That I don't want to do it.
Right.
So I'm not going to do it. And that's not lazy. That is really understanding, letting go of everyone else's idea of how busy I should be.
Mm-hmm.
And saying,
Redefining.
what if I don't work hard?
Right.
How can I make my life easier? What's a
Right.
shortcut? What's efficient? What's less stressful? That's the potent motivator of sloth.
Right. And just basically redefining your own motivations too. That's that to me that's a big thing that I've been working on. So I understand that.
Yeah. And to really, this is again, reframing and owning and claiming and saying it is all sacred.
Right.
There is nothing evil or wrong about any of these emotions or any of these motivators or having an ego or having these primal drives about up yours and I'm better than this and I envy that. Nothing wrong with it. The point, again, always is what's the intention? What do you do with it?
Right.
Once you're aware of it, what do you do with it?
And people, I think, people especially from backgrounds like ours, that's one of the biggest things to overcome is the acceptance of yourself as divine.
Right.
it is that is blasphemy. So you really have to. I mean, it's difficult for some of us to accept that. And I've worked with some people, and just doing consultations, that it's a very difficult thing. I had a lady once where I asked her, I said, have you ever considered how divine your life is and how divine you are as a being? And there was a total blank expression, because I mean, we aren't programmed to think like that. And so it does require some analysis for us to get in there and move things around and do what you're saying, reframe it.
And deprogramming, the word programming that you used, is a very apt and significant one, because it is programming. It's implants,
right?
Beliefs that are not our own, that do not come from our own souls, that come from us outsourcing our spiritual autonomy to others and just taking it in. Just saying, oh, okay, all right, that must be true. So I practice a modality called the bars, which is part of Access Consciousness, and that is, at its purest sense, a deprogrammer.
Okay.
It actually can release multiple lifetimes of limiting beliefs and programming through activating certain specific points on a person's head. That this was shown to be just like acupuncture, accesses these meridian points to free energy flow. The bars, by doing gentle pressure on these specific points, unlocks the energy to release held programming and beliefs. It works really well for the mental aspect of what goes on with our energy. Otherwise, what I do, I tend to work with the spiritual or the soul level stuff, where there's disharmony between the soul and the ego, or the soul and the body.
Right.
And to resolve those, like you said, by introducing new thoughts about, have you considered? And sometimes we do have to baby step our way.
We do.
Back to and just be okay. Okay, what can I accept? I can accept that if I believe that the Creator is truly loving and benevolent, and the Creator created me, I am a part of the Creator. So if I can accept that, then I can start to say, I am Creator energy, just these particular parts of Creator energy. I'm not the fullness of the Creator, because that cannot be contained in one human body.
Right.
But I'm this distilled essence of certain combinations of divine qualities that when I think about Creator, the Creator just looks at each of us with such tenderness and says, aren't you fascinating? How you turned out like that. And I applaud every action, every decision, everything you have done. It's a great experiment. And if it didn't turn out the way you were satisfied with, let's backtrack and redo.
Right.
That there's this infinite grace that is absolutely woven into the earth plane, and which is part of my purpose. I'm both an emissary of the sacred dark, understand and clear up a lot of these, very vilifying, disconnecting judgments about what the dark means.
Right. And
also this idea of healing and restoring divinity in our awareness. That we are the grace, that we are grace incarnate, and grace is love plus power.
Right.
And divine wisdom. I sometimes call it smart grace. That it varies proportions of power and love according to what's needed, because we, as the benevolent, having hobbled and boxed ourselves out of these primal motivators that would give us teeth and claws and fierceness to our benevolence, we're all cloying and codependent, and we can't make anything happen. And you put the power back in there, and suddenly, we are these beautiful, sleek and powerful beings who can get the job done and face the opposition, or outwit the opposition, or outmaneuver the opposition. We don't necessarily have to be violent, But
Right.
forcefulness, sometimes a show of greater power is what's required, and we cannot be afraid to
Right.
be powerful.
That's a big one right there too. Being afraid of your own power is what keeps so many of us in bondage, basically.
Right.
So,
And bondage is such a great word. We've got our own shackles on.
oh boy, and we put them on ourselves. That's the problem. That's what I get. It's like you laced the brace right on your ankle, and you did it yourself.
You did it yourself, and then you're sitting there going, well, what's wrong? And I can't find
Exactly.
the key. I don't know where the key is. We've managed to throw the key outside of our awareness or reach, and then we're asking for some. And I have seen that image sometimes working with myself primarily, that I've got this thing on and I don't know where the key is to unlock. And they're like, it's behind you. That's why you can't see it, honey. It's behind you. Normally symbolically, that would mean it's at the subconscious or back chakra side where you're not readily able to perceive it, but shift your perception and there it is.
Right.
And we do need help from one another to do that. There are times when I really honestly, I can't figure this out for myself.
Right.
I have only certain aspects of divinity contained in my little body container. And I need someone who has a different combination of divine qualities to come give me an infusion of something different. And then pow, it's new and different, better. And I have new levels of healing. So that's another reason why we don't exist in solitary vacuums.
Exactly.
We need to interface with each other because we're all different aspects of divinity.
And that's another part of our spiritual community. That's another show. But it's how do we overcome, this is something to keep in mind for a future one. How do we overcome that distrust that says we can't let anyone see our secret. We can't involve others in our work in that, because it's proprietary and we have to hold on to it. That to me, I see that in evidence at times, and it's disturbing because just as we're talking here, there's so much energy that gets generated just by exchanging views. And it's amazing, and it's so wasted when we don't use it.
Right, and again, this comes out of older, lower levels of consciousness when scarcity and fear and lack were driving us, and competition, therefore, came into our thinking, and we're like which is a flawed premise, and it's a distorted premise that there's not enough for everyone.
Right.
And so if I let you have some, that means there won't be enough for me.
Right. And boy, we see evidence of that right now in our world. It's so dog eat dog that it's so difficult to get people to even think in a cooperative way.
It's a huge paradigm shift. It is emerging. I mean, both you and I, I'm sure, can name people and circles that are collaborative in their efforts and know that we are better together.
Yes, absolutely.
That we are greater as a whole, as a better whole than the sum of the parts.
Right.
But it's a paradigm shift, and it's based on this idea of divine collaboration, that each of us is a potent and powerful individual, and we're better together.
And that's true. Very true. Well, Susan, we have actually talked for quite some time here, so we'll probably have to wrap this up, and we'll do it again because you've got a lot of information that is just really interesting and very it's apropos right now, so it's perfect. I was looking at your website. For one thing, we want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. And that is, your website is Susan Sinclair, all lowercase and all one word, no dots, no dashes, .org, SusanSinclair.org.
Correct.
And I also noticed that you are a co-author of 2 books that are on Amazon, and they are international bestsellers, it says. One of them is called My Journey, My Journal. And then the second one is Are You the Missing Piece? And I think that one sounds really interesting. So we might have to talk about those sometime when you come back.
That sounds great. I know that they're both journal prompts and they have many, many other contributors. So that's the wonderful thing. This is about collaboration and synergy.
Right.
And I contributed my particular piece, and so did many, many others. And so the whole is greater than the sum of any of the parts. I just love that whole idea. And that, yes, as a collaborative unit, we could be bestsellers.
Right.
And reach a lot of people who would benefit from this collective wisdom. So that's cool in and of itself.
So, yeah. Now, so what else do you need the audience to know about how to get a hold of you, or any other events you have coming up, or anything like that?
Well, that's a love. Thank you. Thank you for opening that up. And what I would really love people to do is take their time reading some of the opening pages of the website to get a feel for how could I help relieve your suffering and release your bindings. Because that would be, if you have felt bound and hobbled and unwhole or fragmented by some of these ways of thinking that you're ready to let go of, that is what I do. I clear energy and I bless. I call it the cleanse and bless approach to healing. And you can consult with me. You can have an initial consultation I call the breakthrough session. There is a page, there's a drop-down tab that says work with Susan. You click on that. The first thing would be breakthrough sessions, and that is a complimentary sort of diagnostic about what's happening for you and whether I'm the right person or not to help you. And I will say that I'm kind of a reference librarian for healing resources. And if I'm not the right person, I will very likely get some guidance from Spirit on what would be even better.
Okay.
So that's a great way to get started with me. I also have I have an introductory intuitive session at a very, very affordable rate. And if anyone has questions, they can email me directly, susan@susansinclair.org. And we can discuss how could I help you? What's actually happening? I tend to specialize in inexplicable and entrenched patterns.
Okay.
I guess I would call that the weird shit.
Right. Okay.
If what you've tried on the other levels has not worked, maybe it's time to look at it from the soul level.
Right.
And let that start weaving through the other levels of your being.
Okay.
So thank you. Those are the two main ways that you can get a consult through a breakthrough session. You can look for an introductory session under my personalized programs tab, and we can get started that way. Or you can just write to me, Susan@susansinclair.org, and we can just start talking informally and see where we're meant to go.
Okay, very good. Well, I thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you again, because I was fascinated through this whole process. It's extremely pertinent to where we are in life as a culture, I think. So, and as usual for the audience, I do put links at the bottom of each audio presentation. The page will also have links for contact, and I'll put Susan's her website there for you to just click through. So, Susan, thanks again so much for being with us today. And we look forward to talking to you again. We had a great time today.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Yes, you are I would say you're a creator of synergy. You really bring out, the spirited discussions. And so I'm very grateful to have been here. Thank you for hosting and for doing this wonderful work of putting this out in the world. And yes, let's talk again, because there is a lot more. This is like stepping into this understanding of embracing our wholeness, because as we heal ourselves, it starts with self-discovery, it ends with self-healing, which heals the planet and our dimension and opens up all these possibilities for moving out of destructive cycles into truly upcycling, evolutionary upcycles that will mean the world we envisioned will become the world we are in.
Wow. Very powerful stuff. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Please forward any questions, comments, or inquiries to theoraclescroll@gmail.com, and we'll look forward to entertaining you again very soon in the next episode.